it started. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Flight to Foundry. It's Sunday for me. I think it is for all of us, actually. Okay, good. Time zones are weird. This is the Professional Querying Practices panel, and we have some awesome people here, and I'm gonna let them introduce themselves, starting with Preemi. Go for it.
Yeah, hi. Delighted to be here. My name is Preemi Mohammed. I'm a scientist and a writer based out of Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. My debut novel came out last year, The Rising, with the distinctive black and white cover, and my second novel, which was a sequel, came out this year in March. So two plague books. Delighted. And I haven't had to query for a while, but I'm always helping friends with their queries. And it turns out you actually have to write pitches and proposals quite a bit as an active novelist. So it's not something that you really stop doing.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks for being here. Let's go to Elle and Jose in whatever order you prefer.
I'll go first. Hi, I'm Elle Iyer, and I am represented by Naomi Davis at the Bookends Literary Agency. I have 4 novels out. I write science fiction, lesbian, romance with DSP Publications, and I just signed for 4 more to do a urban fantasy trilogy, lesbian romance, and also another sci-fi lesbian romance coming up. So, and I've had 4 agents, so I have done the query trenches a lot. I think that's, and I've been offered representation 13 times. So I think that's why I'm here.
Okay, nice.
I'm Jose Uriarte. I am currently best known for my short fiction. I've got short stories in Lightspeed, Strange Horizons, Fireside Fiction, a whole bunch of other places. And in a couple of weeks, I'm going to have a story out in Uncanny. But I am represented by Cameron McClure at the Donald Moss Literary Agency. I do have a super secret middle grade novel project sold that I'm not able to yet talk about. But we'll know something about that fairly soon. And that is something that I never would have been able to do if not for my agent, because it's actually an opportunity that landed on my lap. So that may be something worth talking about. And I actually I've had agent representation since before I made my first short fiction sale. It's just haven't found the market yet super receptive to my novels, but hopefully that'll change.
Okay, great. Thank you both. And last but not least, Sam Morgan.
Hey, I'm Sam. I'm a literary agent that specializes in science fiction and fantasy, based out of Brooklyn, rather. I've been an agent for, a few years now. I've probably read close to 10,000 queries, so I would like to think I can offer something here. But some of my clients include Jen Lyons, Megan E. O'Keefe, Jay Posey, Daniel Polanski, and my agency, we work with such people as like Stephen King and George R. R. Martin. I can't think of another person who I represent that I should probably name at this time. Curtis. Yes, I represent Curtis as well. Sorry, forgot.
Yeah, you were this close to getting fired, Sam. You're on the edge, buddy. Okay, yeah, and I am Curtis Chin. I am a writer and the author of Kangaroo novels, and I'm writing serial fiction with Realm. It's interesting. And I've also written short fiction, and Sam is my agent, and he's the best agent I've ever had. Also, the only agent I've ever had.
I'll take it.
That's and so okay, so this is so I'd like to it's Sunday, we've all been doing stuff all weekend, so I'd like to keep this a little bit free form, because I think my personal feeling is that people who have not had a lot of contact with agents or with the publishing industry can learn a lot just by hearing, the stuff that we have actually all been through, and all the different things that can happen that still lead to, good experiences and, publishing deals and all that kind of stuff. So first of all, I just want to talk about being a professional. So my personal feeling is, there are a lot of opportunities now to interact with people that you don't know, like online, on Twitter, and other social media, whatever. And that's great. It's a great way to learn about things if you just kind of go on and listen to people and read what they're writing, and you don't have to like talk back, right? And I think that sort of leads toward, how do you behave like a professional? And my opinion is, behaving like a professional, like acting like a professional, is basically the same as actually being a professional, because we're talking about when you're working with other humans and talking to them, if you can sort of, control your whatever impulses you may have to do like weird things and to be aware of like what is a good way to deal with this particular person in this context, right? Because I will say, when I'm having a business conversation with Sam, it is different than when I'm like back in the day when we might be hanging out in the bar and just chatting about whatever. Like those are very different environments and very different moods. So right. So what is my question here? So let's go ahead and start. And how about if we just share how each of us signed our current representation. Let's go and start with Premi. Like you're with Michael Curry, is that right?
Yeah, with Michael Curry.
Okay.
So actually, Jose and I are now, I realize, agency
Oh, yeah.
siblings. Because yeah, we're with the Donald Mass Literary Agency. I got to meet Donald Mass at Worldcon in 2019, and that was super exciting. And I had been to another party before I went to the agency party, and he showed up all cheerful and shake people's hands, and I stuck my hand out and was just like, for about 30 seconds, so that was humiliating. Luckily, it did not cause them to cancel my contract or anything. I think I went through, I guess, what you'd call probably the most conventional path to representation. So I wrote a novel, I polished it up a little bit, I wrote a query letter, and I got my spreadsheet of agents I wanted to query, starting from the top 10 dream agents to the bottom. I guess she's got a pulse, knows some editors. And I decided I would go in batches. So I'd go 10 and then wait a bit, see if there was feedback, and then go, 10 or 12 or something, and then wait a bit and see if there was feedback. But I ended up getting signed with the first batch. So about 6 weeks after I started querying, I signed the contract with Michael, and we started to work on the submission package for my novel.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Let's how about Elle next? And as you mentioned, you've had contact with a lot of agents. So
Yeah.
how did you get your most recent one? And like and for you in particular, because you had other representation before, like at what point would that come up in the conversation? Like, did you lead with that, or did they know that already, or was it something you felt you'd had to disclose?
So it's kind of complicated, because if I told the absolute truth on how I got my current agent, I sent her a Facebook message and said, "Hey, do you still want to represent me?" I do not recommend that approach. That takes a very specific set of circumstances to have occurred before that happens. So one of the things I would say definitely is never burn a bridge, and always be professional, and always be friendly. As I said, I've had 4 agents. My first 3 and I are still on good terms. 2 of us are Facebook friends. 1 still has an open door. It's a business. It's not personal, and it doesn't always work. So the short form of each one, my first one contracted cancer, and she had to leave the business for a job that offered actual health care. And that, and she's completely recovered. She's doing very, very well, and we are still friends. My second one decided that being an agent wasn't for her, and so she changed careers. My third really, and I used to be with Donald Moss Agency, by the way, so it's been crazy. My third wanted to represent my MF romance, but really didn't have the contacts for FF romance. And she said, if you ever write another MF, call me. We're good. But that's not the way I ended up going. And so one of the agents who I had turned down in a flurry of offers was a Facebook friend, and we'd always kind of clicked in a professional friendly way, and we talked all the time. So that's why I ended up just Facebooking her and saying, hey, I am again looking for an agent. As far as disclosing that information, I always disclosed it up front. I never want to hide anything. And I actually think it helped each time to know that people had trusted me and my professionalism multiple times. It wasn't a personality issue. We were still friends. We parted ways amicably. I think that was probably a plus, not a minus. And having that come out later, I think would have been a minus. I don't think that you should hide anything from someone you want a long-term professional relationship with. That's really important. And again, you don't want to burn any bridges. If you can stay friends, stay friends.
Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah, thank you for sharing all that. I do want to say one thing off of something you mentioned. So you mentioned, this is a business relationship, and and it's kind of become a cliche for people to say it's not business, it's business, it's not personal. And this is, I have to say this because
it can be both. It's great if you can be friends and have a solid business partnership as well.
right,
And I
sure.
would say that that's the relationship I have now with my agent.
Yeah. I would. So for my part, I would say I would like everyone to remember that it is still like it may not be a personal relationship, but it is still a person that you're dealing with on the other end. So as I mentioned earlier, I think there are kind of different contexts you can um, talk to people in at different times. So even if you think about personal friendships or family relationships you might have, it's like, are you going to talk to this person about this thing at this time? Is that appropriate? Like where like you draw different lines at different under different circumstances. Okay, Jose, how about you?
So I also, like Prima, began querying in batches, and I actually started in really tiny batches, and then just kind of every time I'd get like a rejection, I send maybe two more submissions out, and so the number was growing. Because I was still tweaking very much, and so the feedback that I would get back would let me know, would give me a sense of what I wanted to tweak. So this is about to date how long it's been since I was doing my querying. I happened to win the Backspace Agent Author Seminar contest, where you could fly out to New York and be part of their query and first pages. They no longer do that. It was a wonderful experience and a wonderful seminar. So it's a shame that they don't, as far as I know. And one of the agents there who was closed to queries slipped me a card and said, send me more. And I did, and I still had other things out at the time. I ended up getting an offer of representation from that agent, and then I nudged the other agents who were looking at my work, and I ended up getting an offer of representation from Cameron as well. And it was a difficult and excruciating decision. But I like the ideas that Cameron had about how to make my book better. And so actually the fact that she had thoughts along those lines actually impressed me and made me choose to go with her. And we still are.
Okay, great, thank you. And I'll say real quick. For me, I told a lot of my query story yesterday in a query. What was it called? Query letters at work. I gave a whole presentation. So I believe that's still online if you want to go, sit through me yelling at you for an hour about pitches. And yeah, I did the same thing as Primi and Jose mentioned. Like I was querying in batches just in case I wanted to tweak something. And it took me more than a year and more than 24 queries before anyone asked to see a partial or a full manuscript. And I kind of just did my homework up front and figured out how do I write a query and what is the standard way to send a query letter. And again, that's all in the presentation from yesterday. Okay, so Sam, you're going to have a different perspective. So I guess who can you maybe talk about who is your newest client and how did they query you cold? Did you meet them at the conference?
No, the only client I've signed so far in 2021 came straight from my slush pile. I was just reading it, thought it was a great hook, and I read more of it. What had actually happened was I was reading another query, and then Valentina is her name. She emailed me, as you're supposed to do, that she had already received an offer of representation. I was like, well, darn. She gave me the appropriate amount of time to make my decision. So I immediately went and read the book, loved it, and I scheduled a call with her, and we went over like what I thought needed to happen with the book. Like as I said, I had some changes for her that I thought the book needed to happen, and I just we call it a beauty contest, where I just sort of made my case for myself and my agency and like what I could do for the book. And at the end of the day, she chose me, and I was really grateful. And I have it on submission now. So it's I haven't signed a person from the query slush pile in about a year at that point. It was just the most standard situation I come across. It's actually kind of refreshing. I was like, oh yeah, this is how we do it. It's great.
Yeah.
But I know some agents don't like giving too many notes on those kind of calls when you're in a beauty contest because they want to hold back. I never do that. I'm always like, I want this to be the best book you can be, and I have some ideas, and feel free to take them or not. No hard feelings. And yeah, that's just how I did it.
Okay. No,
Good
that's
time.
awesome. Yeah. And that made me that reminded me of something that Elle said earlier about how you mentioned when this author got another offer from a different agent, she immediately told you, since you also
Yep.
had the query, and just to let you know. And so everyone had all the information they needed to make the decision.
Yeah.
And like Elle said, people do, like, agents and publishing people do talk to each other all the time.
Yeah.
So they know if something's going on with someone.
There's an infamous story about how Joe Hill, Stephen King's son, didn't tell his agent for 10 years that he was Stephen King's son. And if any of my clients are like James Patterson's son, they better tell me. I need to know that. So Curtis, if that's your dad or something, please let me know.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
He's not.
Yeah, it's so I'm just like, guys, don't do that to me.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I was going to ask a follow-up question to someone, but I've lost it. So let me see. Okay. So querying and being a professional. So we've talked a little bit about people sending query letters. Do people have thoughts on, like, back in the day, and someday in the future when we're all able to, like, get together in person, you're going to go to conventions and conferences and meet agents and editors in person. Um, and um, and the one thing I would say is, like, I have gone to a writers conference, like sign up for pitch sessions and like pitch my novel, like, in person, which is like one of the toughest things you can do. Like, oh my God, it's like yeah, it's like stand-up comedy, but you can't even be funny. It's like, just tell me. Just kind of like, and Sam's been through this too on the other end. But apart from that, just sort of like when you meet people, and like, do you have any tips on, like, conducting yourself as a professional, like when you don't know who they are, when you do know who they are, when you find out they're like your favorite editor from your favorite magazine or whatever it is, like, yeah. Anyone want to go first? I'll open the floor.
I always just tell anyone querying or who wants to get into publishing to be professional but personal, because this entire industry is based upon relationships, and you don't ever want to burn any bridges to a certain extent. So it's just be yourself, be nice, be cool, be professional, but keep it sincere and be yourself, and that's just how you do it. I noticed, Curtis, on your screen, Duskfall from Christopher Husbert. I met him at a Worldcon a few years ago. He was just like a seemingly nice dude who wanted to talk about publishing, and we went to lunch, and I was like, hey, you seem like a nice guy. Tell me about your book. And he told me about it, and I loved it. And now the fifth book in his quintet comes out in a few weeks, and it's just it was because he was at a conference and he was a nice guy and we got along. And I was like, you seem like the kind of person I want to work with. So it was just, he was professional but personal, and that's kind of the balance you have to strike when you do these sort of things in person.
I think it's really good to enthuse about the things that you like and talk about the books that you've loved, talk about the short stories that you've loved, and give whatever professional you're talking about the opportunity to do the same and enthuse about the things that they've liked and enthuse about the things that they have represented as well.
Absolutely. And I think it's interesting that I'm actually friends with more agents than, you know, we hang out. It's like which the conferences, like they don't represent me, but it doesn't matter. We go to karaoke together and we hang out at the bar because
you're not asking for
something. Because I'm not asking for anything. But even when I was looking for an agent, we would still just kind of hang out and talk about other things, not just the publishing industry. And I think I think sometimes they get really tired of it too. And I think that asking about, you know, what are their hobbies or what do they like to do outside of the industry, if they ever have a moment that's not part of the industry. And I get that. I think that helps as well, just being yourself. I would say always be one drink more sober than the person that you're pitching at. Always, because it's easy to get very nervous and forget that they're just people. Like anyone else, it might be a person you want to impress, but you want to make sure that you're in complete control of your vocabulary and your professionalism as well.
Back in the day, I always found that sooner or later the question, so what are you working on, would always come up. And if I just let it come up on its own rather than try to force the conversation to go there, it just always seemed better.
Yeah. I have sort of two anecdotes, I guess, about that. But one is I've never done one of those in-person pitch sessions I was about to say, but then I realized actually I've done hundreds of them for work. So I've been working in various aspects of science since, I don't know, whatever we're at now, like 2000 probably. And that is something you actually end up doing a lot at real conferences is people come up to you and they go, hey, what are you working on? And you look at them and you're like, oh, this person is part of the funding panel. Cool. Summarize your research, know your audience, expect the usual questions that they will ask about it. They're going to say, what's the so what factor? They're going to say, what's the novelty factor? They're going to say, what would you put in the discussion section of this paper if you were writing a paper about it? And you can't say, well, I'm not going to write a paper about it because we have no money. You're actually not supposed to say that. But I imagine the same rules would apply to a pitch session, which is be prepared, know who might read it, have your comps ready to go, and don't say something like, well, if people liked Lord of the Rings, they'll like my book because it also has a wizard in it. You know, be realistic about what your science or your book is doing. And the second anecdote, I really needed to talk to you, Elle, before I had gone again to Worldcon 2019 because I was leaning on the bar in the con bar, waiting for the bartender to pour my cider. But of course, there were a lot of writers there, and we were all self-medicating our social anxiety very heavily, and recounting the plot of the latest novella I had just finished to a friend. And someone came up behind me and was like, hey, did somebody buy that already? Is that spoken for? And I was like, who are you? Well, it turned out it was the acquiring editor for ECW Press, who said she wanted to take a look at this story if I was done it. And she very intelligently wrote her name and the rest of her information and fungus book on the back of a business card and gave it to me and said, when you get back to Canada, have your agent send me that book. So that's coming out in September. Literally. I did not make a pitch. If you can summarize a plot in a couple of sentences while you're waiting for your drink, you're in good shape. Yeah. I think she was literally just prowling around, waiting for people to talk what they were working on to see if she could have it.
Well, I've got one of those anecdotes too. I signed with my first agent at Backspace, the same conference that he was talking about. I also had won my way there the year right before he won his way there. And so one of the agents who was the judge for that competition had been holding on to my query for 11 months. 11 months. and we had exchanged emails and emails. This was my very first attempt to get an agent. And when I got there and she actually had a chance to interact with me in person, and I'm a lot better at that now than I was then. I was a nervous wreck, but there was no beer available, which is probably a really good thing. So when she took me into a room and it was just the two of us, and she sits me down and she says, I want to offer you representation. And all I did was stare at her because I was waiting for the but. Because every single rejection letter that I would get was be like, we'd love to offer you representation, but it doesn't quite work for us. And so I'm just staring and she's staring back. And I'm telling you, like many seconds passed while we're staring. Finally, she said, you're not going to throw up on my shoes, are you? Because apparently a prospective client had done this in a different occasion. So and I'm like, no, there's no more to that sentence. And she said, no, I really do want to offer you representation. So yes, relax, breathe. Creamy, you need to stop taking sips while I'm telling anecdotes.
Yeah, sorry, I was like, there was going to be tea coming out of my nose. Okay, keep it now. We're good.
Okay. No, that's awesome. Thank you all for sharing. I mean, this is great. I just love hearing other people's stories about publishing because it can be so weird sometimes, and it's it's great when you get these reassurances that yes, like good things definitely happen, and they happen to good people who are like doing it right, and even
Curtis,
if doing it right.
Curtis, I mean, that's how we got put together as well, because you didn't even query me. You queried my former coworker, who
Yeah,
I still take no offense to that, but
you were an agent, Sam. You weren't open to queries.
I know. But that's another thing. It's like, if you have the right material and you present it to people, I talk to my coworkers all the time, and if someone sends me something that isn't right for me, but it might be right for them, I'll show it to them. And that's what happened with Curtis. He wrote just still one of the best queries I've seen, and my old coworker was like, "This isn't for me, but it sounds like it's for you." And I was like, "You're absolutely right. Thank you very much." And that's how we came to be. So like it's manipulating relationships in a beneficial way that should sound slightly less sociopathic, but that's kind of just how it works.
Yeah. No, yeah, totally true. Go ahead, Jose.
Just in case we're about to move on from the in-person pitching, I just want to throw a suggestion out there that was very helpful for me, because I do tend towards anxiety, and I was afraid of having that situation where somebody would say, "So what are you working on?" And I'd be like, "It's a book."
With words. There are words in this book.
Yeah, it's nice, maybe. So I felt like I made a list of basically things for me to remember, and I felt like it was short enough that I could deliver it not as a canned monologue, but just if I can just get from A to B to C to D. So my formula, and I'm not claiming to have invented this, but it was an adjective, noun, struggles to goal, so that, and then just fill that blank. And I felt like anytime I would talk, the question would come up, I was ready to extemporize my way through that chain, and it made me a lot less nervous, and it worked for me pretty well.
And the thing is too that a lot of agents are so very, very good at understanding that writers tend toward anxiety, and so they'll pull the rest of it out. They'll ask the right questions.
Oh, yeah.
If you can just get that bit out, you're okay. So
yeah, I've had so many people nervous when they try and talk to me. I'm just like, it's cool, it's fine. Just main character. What happens? What do they want? What's standing in their way? How many words is it? The genre. You're good. That's all you gotta do. It's as easy as that.
I like how after you become a novelist, though, and people are like, "So what are you working on?" Your answer can only be, "Unfortunately, I can't tell you because I haven't been given permission yet." I assure you, it is a book with words in it.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, thank you all. I wanted to follow up on a couple of things that people said. So definitely, in-person social anxiety is definitely a thing with writers, especially, I think. And it's on the one hand, it's going to be great when we get back to seeing each other, in the same physical space. But also that's going to make things more difficult for certain people who have accessibility issues or who can't afford to travel or all that. But I think, as I said, there are a lot of ways to connect with people online. And it's the advantage of that is that you often have more time to sort of consider your responses, so that you're not like right there at the bar. You need to say something in 5 seconds, or it's going to get weird. You can take a minute to think about, okay, what did they say, and don't take too long, because like don't get in your head about it. It's like, what did they mean by that? But I think really the most important thing you could do for a query or a pitch, anything of that nature, is someone just said it, and I'm sorry, I can't remember who, but it's you want to hook them and get them interested in hearing more about it. You don't have to tell them everything right in the first sentence, right? Because that's impossible. You're not going to explain your whole novel in that, in 5 seconds. And you don't want to take like 15 minutes of their time when you don't know if they're interested or not. You want to, know what's special about your story and say right up front, like, oh, this is like, it's a gender bent Alexander the Great in space. And I would, yeah, that's Kate Elliott's latest book, Unconquerable Sun. So like, yeah, like Sam says, like, that's enough to let you know, like, are you interested in that? Or like, this is like about a weird alien fungus or whatever, right? Like, it's a cordyceps story, whatever. And I think Jose said, like, if you're struggling for, how you can encapsulate or introduce the story in a really concise way like that, a formula like that can be really helpful. So, for any story, I think you can come up with something short that is of the form, this character needs to do this thing, but this is standing in their way, whatever it is. Kind of like Sam said, right? Like, who is it? Who's the person we're going to care about, at least at the start of the book? If you have multiple characters, it's like a sprawling epic. That's fine. But who's the first chapter about, right? This person needs to do this thing, and this is standing in their way, whether it's like an internal character thing or an external, setting thing. And if that interests them, then that opens the door for you to have the conversation about it. Okay, cool. Okay, so it's like we've been chatting for about half an hour. I am going to hop over to the Discord and encourage people to ask questions. But if anyone else has a follow-up thought right now, feel free to.
Twitter is a great place to learn how to pitch quick. So if,
Yes.
if you do pitch wars or any of those, that's a great way to learn how to encapsulate your story in 140 characters or whatever it is now. And I've gotten some good results there. So I think that's a good way to get out there.
And I wanted to jump on something that Premi had said earlier. I find that even still having representation, I still write pitch paragraphs for my new projects. And I find that it helps me not just to pitch to other people, but also it helps me to stay in the right headspace as I write, to help me remember what this story is actually about.
Yeah, same. I was going to say, I literally this morning for another con taught a workshop on querying, pitching, and writing the shorter things, because I think novelists get the idea that we're good at words. We should be able to write something short. It's actually much harder to write something short than it is to write 110,000 words, because we're the type of people who, when someone says, so what's your book about? We say, well, it's 110,000 words. That's what the book is about. I wrote the book to tell you what the book is about. And then we go off and cry. But what I find is writing the pitch for the query and a log line and a synopsis for the things I'm working on, not because they might be asked for, but because especially a synopsis is so useful to immediately see the weaknesses in the actual structure, because then you're looking at it from the higher view. And by this point, you're already able to think, oh, an editor would pounce on that. Those are two things that don't hang together. Arc is broken. Let's fix that in the synopsis before I get too far into the book. But I guess second thing, which I guess is aimed kind of at Sam, I attended AWP in whatever that was, March. And of course, that's mostly focused on litfic. And I felt like I was kind of there as a spy. Because it's funny how little the litfic and genrefic worlds tend to meet. But several of the people on the panels talked about how they had gotten their agent or representation. They had been recruited out of their MFA, or they had gotten a professor's recommendation, or they had a story in Granta or the Paris Review. And in one case, this woman was like, I had a story in the Paris Review. Several agents contacted me, and one of them contacted me every couple of months saying, "Hey, are you done that book that you said you were writing? Because I would like to represent you." And she actually ended up accepting a different offer of rep because the other guy seemed to have some boundary issues. But people, I think, have this impression that you need to know somebody in order to get representation and not be found out of the slush pile. And at AWP, nobody had gone through the slush pile. So what do you feel like the truth of those statements kind of is?
It's both. I like the slush file because it is very democratic. Anyone can submit to it. I will see it and I'll judge it based on its merits. But the alternate methods of finding representation do happen. Like I've signed people from short stories. I've signed people just, I see them on Twitter and I think they're funny and they seem like a good person to work with and like that. Friends of friends or friends of clients have sent me stuff and I start working with them that way. So, but it just always goes back to the personal but professional kind of deal. And, you know, when I do approach short story writers, I'm like, do you have a novel? Like, yes. So, can I read it? Yes. And that's how it happens. But
Okay.
yeah, the
So
whole lit fiction area, they're weird.
it's another panel.
Yeah.
All right, so we have a couple of questions. I'm going to read them because I don't think they'll show up on the stream. I put them in the chat here just for our reference. But the first one is for Sam. Is there anything that you most want to see in a hook or query that will make it compelling for you? And I think this is going to be different for depending on who you're talking to, like the agent. Because different agents want different things, right?
Right. Well, I think the most important thing to remember sort of in this question is a query is a document that's supposed to make me want to read the book. Like it's not a synopsis, it's not a summary, it is a sales document that makes me want to read the book. So you as a writer would have spent hours and hours and hours writing your book. Like there has to be some sort of enthusiastic idea behind the story that would make you want to do that crazy thing to, you know, hundreds of hours in front of a computer alone by yourself. So I want to see that reason that would compel you to write the book and finish it in your query. And if you're doing something super commercial that you're hoping a lot of people will like, it'll have a juicy hook. And usually the shorter and clearer it is, the better. And it'll kind of give me an idea of like, oh, that's immediately what it is. And I can see what it is and go from there. And yeah, keep it short, sweet, and punchy.
Okay, cool. And then a question for the writers. Is there anything that you found is best to do when composing a query to make it compelling?
Yeah, and again, luckily we just talked about this morning. I guess the compellingness part, or at least I've found in the proposals and pitches and stuff that I've had to write, kind of boils down to sort of two things, which is why could this story not happen without these characters specifically? So it has to be really specific and vivid and precise. But secondly, why could only these characters be involved in this story? So what's special about them? Why couldn't you swap out basically anybody? So whatever makes your characters sort of feel real and deep and special and interesting, not likable necessarily, but interesting. If you can communicate that through the proposed actions in the query, I think that's probably the best way to go. And I've gotten feedback on that with the novel proposals and stuff that I've written. Is why them? Why now? Why not somebody else?
Okay, yeah, that's great. Elle or Jose?
I think going outside of the story itself, but also indicating some knowledge of the marketability and also some knowledge of if you can find something to compare it to that the agent will recognize pretty quickly. And I hesitate to compare my work to television or film because that indicates perhaps that I'm not a heavy reader, and I am. But we did push one of them as Xena Warrior Princess in Space, where the subtext is the main text. Okay, you know exactly what that is. That was how we pitched one of them. Another one, I can't remember off the top of my head, but also indicating a knowledge of recent titles that are similar to but not the same as that have been successfully marketed is a good idea, because it demonstrates that you know your genre, you know the market. Your last contact with science fiction wasn't Asimov. Not that there isn't anything wrong. I mean, there's nothing wrong with Asimov, but we write very differently now. So
Yeah.
Okay.
I
don't know.
get. Oh, sorry, Jose, please go. Sorry.
okay.
Oh,
I was gonna say,
I
I
just
don't
get.
know
Oh, sorry. Let's do Jose first,
Yes,
and then
Jose.
to Sam.
I need to have a drink with this group. Okay, the next time we're at a con, this group right here.
the Zoom thing. I don't know that I have a lot of specific things to add to what's already been said in terms of what to put in. I will say that, and again, this will take me a little bit, but I found very useful Kristen Nelson's Pub Rants website to look at queries that work for her and to see how she basically to start to get the sense that this is a learnable formula. This is not magic. I know it feels like my book is 400 pages. How can I summarize this in a couple of paragraphs? But there are some specific things that you know that you look for, like, you know, what is the character's life before the inciting incident, and what's wrong with it that they're lying to themselves about, and you know, what are they going to have to do, and what are the stakes? The other thing I found very, very helpful was reading Query Shark to the point where I would know, oh, here she comes. You know, I knew what was gonna set her
Smell the
off.
blood.
Yes.
We just went off the rails. All right,
Oh, no.
brace yourselves. But once you
Yeah.
can start recognizing other people's missteps, that makes it a whole lot easier to not make those same missteps.
I
Okay.
studied Query Shark so obsessively before I queried. I was on it for like an hour a day, 2 hours a day, just
Yeah.
scrolling
yeah.
and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling.
Yep.
I'd
Same.
like to tell you about my fictional novel. I mean, wait, how could you?
All right. Now, Sam.
Oh, well, going off what Primi said about why your characters are in the story, one of the things I like to know in a query is like why you, the author, wrote the story itself. Why couldn't anyone else have written the story like you? That's why I always encourage people to put at least something in the bio sort of section of your query. Just tell me who you are, because you are a person. There are interesting things about you. A client of mine, we spent the first 45 minutes of our first phone call just talking about college sports and football and basketball. And I remembered at the end, I was like, oh yeah, we should probably talk about your book. He's like, no, you're good. I'm signing with you. You're cool. So I was like, great. So that was fun. But then also what Elle said about the comp stuff. So since my agency does represent George R.R. Martin, I get people comparing their book to Game of Thrones all the time. And while it is good, the better technique I've seen is like comparing very specific things about it. So it's like, is it the socioeconomic politics of it? Is it like sort of the like generations of history behind it that you can sort of like, if you're gonna do something bigger and more well known, be specific about it. Otherwise, like we talked about, find something recent and current and very directly comparable to it and go from there. Because I've had people, I had this one query that just still to this day, it haunts me. They go, it's like if it's Harry Potter meets Lord of the Rings meets the Hunger Games meets Game of Thrones meets Maze Runner. I was just like, that you're just listing things. What
You got like one of these. Come on.
yeah.
I'm putting my water away. I can't drink when you keep listening.
All right. Yeah. Like Sam said, compounds can be very tricky. And the other thing I wanted to mention, he mentioned that phone call where, and I think this is something that can sometimes get lost in sort of the, you know, when you're a very new writer and you're still learning about publishing, like, oh, I need like the best agent who knows the most people or whatever, or has the most experience. But I think it's really, really important to find someone that you are able to connect with, like Sam and I were able to connect about, various other things, writing
Drinking.
funny stuff in particular, and because you're gonna hopefully, like, you're gonna have, hopefully a long, business relation with this person, and you're gonna have to talk to them not just about the business stuff, but because it's your art, it can get very personal and intimate when you're talking about, oh, like, you need to make this change, or I think you need to make this change to your story, and you're like, well, but that's crucial to the story, and like, is it? Are you sure? Like, you need to be able to have those kinds of conversations with this person, and so you want it to be a person that you can be honest with about those things. Okay, we have another question here. This is also for Sam, but maybe also Al can speak to this. Should an author say if they were previously agented in a query letter? How much detail should they provide, or is that a conversation for later in the process?
I would say it depends. I mean, you can say it. It's not super necessary. I would bring it up at some point, if not in the initial query. Maybe that first phone call, just being like, sort of, hey, this is sort of my history of publishing. I was previously with so and so, tried such and such, it didn't work. Especially if you're querying with a novel that your prior agent had already submitted, that's very important to know, because I would want to know who has already seen it and such like that. But it does help to know, because it means someone else has sort of seen your work and judged it worthy of representation. If that makes sense, like, that's a positive sign, but it's not necessary. But it is important to say eventually, early in the conversation.
Okay, good to know.
I would agree. I think, I mean, I was very, very upfront. I think if you had a more difficult relationship with an agent, then it might take some more thought on when you disclose that information. But I think eventually it really does need to be discussed no matter what. It worked as a positive for me. I don't know how it would work for everyone. Again, but if it has already been shopped, if the work has already been shopped, that's something that the agent absolutely needs to know right away.
Yeah.
I was fortunate that nothing had already been shopped. I had written more books, but
yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I think we have time for one more question. And this may be a tricky one, but when you're getting silence on a query, so you send it out, you haven't heard back, what are some good ways to find ways to rework it or rethink it, etc.? Oh, Al, go for it.
So one of the things that it took me way too long to figure this out, is that silence on a query is not necessarily a bad thing. And two of the agents I did end up signing with were both agents who generally didn't respond unless you already had interest from somewhere else. And so when I got an offer and then nudged the people who had not responded and said, I've got this offer, are you still considering? Then I got this firestorm of interest. If I had pursued or kept pushing on the agents who had not responded, those doors would have all been closed, and I would not have been able to let them know and had another shot and had more of a choice. So I don't necessarily think that it's definite that if you're not getting a response, that means there's something wrong with it. It might be that they're just really, really overwhelmed, because this happens all the time. It might be that they are an agent who is really high on the scale of agenthood. I don't know how you would define that. Who doesn't respond to everybody and kind of waits to see if there's a nibble first. But you might want to show it to some people who have been successful with their queries and see if they could give you some feedback, if they're willing, on whether or not it needs to be reworked. But it might not. It might not actually, especially if you're starting top down, you're less likely to hear back from that group of agents. at all.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and like what I keep hearing from my own agent is, similar to Sam, he gets hundreds of queries a month. He's he's a younger agent, a junior agent, being mentored, and he's still building his list. And you get 5,000 queries in a year, and you sign between 0 and 1 people. So the default answer is silence, or like the default answer is a rejection. It's not personal. It doesn't mean your query is actually busted, but I definitely agree to get a second pair of eyes on it, because by this point, you've probably looked at it so much that it's like wallpaper, and you can't really see where it could be strengthened or where you can make your premise or your hook clearer.
Okay, thank you. So I think we need to wrap up because of time, but thank you all for doing this. This has been a great conversation, and I hope it's helped some of the folks out there. I have another thing at the next hour, but if any of our panelists want to drop into Discord, it is Superton A. There's some more questions there, but people are already having their own discussions, which is great. So to close, for each of our panelists, where can people find you online? What are you doing next? What are you excited about? Preemi.
I'm always on Twitter. At Premisaurus is my handle, and my website is just premimohammed.com. And I have 2 more novellas coming out this year, which the information's on my website, and a bunch of short stories. So stay tuned for that.
Excellent. Thank you. Elle.
My website is liar.com. I am on Twitter. I am on Facebook. My Stormfronts trilogy just got mass market releases, so we're really excited about that. And we are starting edits on the Urban Fantasy trilogy next month, so look for that soon, because small press will get them out fast. So it won't be too long before those are coming out.
Excellent. Jose.
I am, like Preemi, constantly on Twitter, so I'm Labyrinth Rat there, and my website is labyrinthrat.com, but I never update it. So, and I have, as I mentioned, a short story coming out in Uncanny next month that I dearly hope that people will read and love. And I have a book, and it's got words in it that will come out on a day, and it'll happen in the future.
All right. Thank you. Sam.
I'm Sam Roebuck on Twitter, Roebuck. And I have so many books coming out this year. If you follow me on Twitter, I'll be sure to mention them. Probably House of Always by Jen Lyons comes out in May. The book 4 in her Course of Dragons series I'm really excited about. That's me.
Excellent. Thank you. And I'm Curtis C. Chen. It's 3 C's, so that's curtiscchen.com, at Curtis C. Chen on Twitter, something on Facebook, Instagram. Yeah. Accept no substitutes. There are other Curtis Chens on the internet. You'll know when you find me, hopefully, if I've done my job right. Okay. Thank you all for being here. Hope to see you all again soon.
Yeah, thank you for moderating.
Thanks, Curtis.
Yeah. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
All right. See you guys.
Goodbye.
See you on Discord.